Hello, welcome to it, UAP Studies Podcast. I always get charged up listening to our music, man. That's a wicked little intro we got, and it puts me in the mood to have a good show. So, my name is Louis Borges. Joining me, as always, my illustrious co-host Jason Gilbert. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really good, really good. Happy to be here again, recording another show. We keep getting lots of good press and fan mail, and our subscribership is going through the roof. All these good things that keep telling us to do more shows. People commenting on our posts saying, hey, you guys are doing good things. Keep it coming. We like it. We tune in every week. So thank you to everybody who's doing that. We wanted to kind of have a show today to talk a little bit about UAP programming, like television series, documentaries on Netflix and Amazon Prime and that type of stuff. Based on our opinion, this is kind of like not the Siegfried and Roy, the Siskel and Ebert is what I meant to say. Siskel and Ebert.
Oh,
review.
come on.
Well, Siegfried and Roy were into lions and stuff. That's kind of
Yeah,
cool
we're
too,
not
so.
so much. Yeah,
I think one of them got eaten though, so we probably shouldn't go too deep into that.
I think UAP is a lot safer of an industry than taming lions or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
nobody's tamed any grays yet, so we should probably not relate it to
that we
Siskel
know
and
of.
Roy.
That we know of. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to mention some of our opinions about certain programs that we've watched, some that we like, some that we think are full of it. Obviously, judge for yourself, but let's get right into it. So roll the dice here. We'll pick a show. Like, let's pick a popular show, like Ancient Aliens on the History Channel. So you
starts
go first.
with an A. I like it.
Starts with an A. Yeah, let's do this alphabetically. What do you think? Ancient Aliens, yay or nay?
Well, I'm going to say yay for, up to year 8, I think. But year 8, I think they kind of start running out of material and they start rehashing stories that we've already seen. They just maybe have a different spin on it, maybe a newer interview about the same subject. But to me, I thought it was a little bit more repetitive, things that we've already covered. So, I would say up to about season 8, I love the show.
For me, when I first watched it, I was sort of still really skeptical minded about a lot of things. And it just seemed like every astronomical phenomenon they were looking at or any ancient ruin, it always had to tie into it must be aliens. Like, and at some point, I remember I watched one episode and I was 3/4 of the way into it. And I thought, you know what? They're actually putting some pretty plausible information out there.
Yeah.
And it was just like a quick left turn right into the aliens. And I thought, now you're kind of getting stupid. But, oddly enough, and the more I've gotten into this subject and research and talk to people and be on the show with you, and, you get these people that fill in these gaps. And then you kind of relate it back to ancient, civilizations and structures and things like that. It's not all that crazy anymore. And I've subsequently gone back and watched most of the episodes again, right from season 1 up until the ones that they're putting out now. I noticed recently the ones they're releasing seem to be almost a COVID version of it, where it's like 4 guys in a studio just chatting about their opinion. They're doing a video podcast essentially, rather than professional filming and different like cut scenes and different. They don't have as many people on an episode as they used to. So maybe that's a byproduct of the pandemic and that type of thing. But I think they've got a little more on point recently. Again, I do agree with you. There's a lot of rehashing, it seems, because there's only so many ancient ruins in the world that you can talk about. And I mean, stuff is constantly being discovered, but I could see it being a little tough for new material at times.
They do mention, about history being written, fairly recently, as far as we know. And whenever there's a war, even what's going on in the Ukraine right now, we completely annihilate the culture. Like, we destroy their statues, we destroy their libraries, and we do that and we've done this for how many millennia?
Yeah, history was written by the winners of the wars.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of civilizations that this could have happened to them, but maybe they were ahead in, the way that they were building their buildings. Maybe they did get help from somewhere that it doesn't make sense. There's a big hole there that sort of leaves the plausibility, at least, that UFOs or, extraterrestrial life actually helped us out many times in the past, right?
Some of these ruins are just incredible, though. Like, you take the Temple of Baalbek in Lebanon, which was subsequently built over by the Romans to be the Temple of Jupiter or something like that. So, and that's actually a commonality around the world. A lot of these sacred sites have many layers of other sacred sites. Whether the side A or side B won the conflict, they seem to almost have reverence for that space And even if they destroy the old temple, they usually rebuilt their own on the same spot. But if you look at Baalbek, there's 3 stones that I think they're like 700 tons each. Like ridiculous. These are 50-foot long by 10-foot high by 30-foot wide kind of thing. And they're slid in the middle of the structure, almost in like Jenga fashion. So obviously, if you want to go for easy, you don't play with rocks that size, right? We build in bricks that you can carry with your hands.
Right.
We haven't been, building monolithic stones for years and years and years. But if you look at the amount of effort it would have gone into to quarry those in one piece at a time where they're supposed to be using like what, bone tools, maybe bronze at best, or copper tools. Some of these stones are way harder than the tools they supposedly had, and the amount of precision that they used to quarry them, move them is a whole other story. We could barely do that by today's standards, and they didn't even use them as the foundation stones. They put them in the middle.
Yeah.
They had to get them 20 or 30 feet off the ground just to make it that much harder. Like, who would go through that? And what we're taught is a time frame where we can barely forage for enough food to keep ourselves sustained. Who's
Like
going to burn
the
those
yeah,
calories to do that shit? It doesn't make any sense.
the average lifespan was 24 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not going to dedicate half of your life to something unless you truly believe that it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I don't even necessarily believe that it was technology passed on to us by these ancients, because even if we had the mathematical plans to do it, we don't have the technology or the ability to do it. Even by today's standards, with our current technology and our current machinery and everything else, some of these stones, you'd have to drag them over mountain and water and everything else. Why the hell would you do that? You'd make a shrine, sure. I mean, every culture has looked to the heavens for some kind of spiritual benefit, but you could simplify that. God's not telling you to build something like that. So why did they do that? And why is it prevalent in so many places, Stonehenge and everything else? Why do you need 150-ton stones to prove a point? It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Or build a culture around. Like you got Egypt and then you got Mexico that have these pyramids.
Yeah.
And it seems like cultures were built around this concept. And they're
And they all seem to be the same age. You look at South America, you look at Africa. There's even ones in Europe that they found. I think in Serbia they found pyramids hidden in jungle ruins. And some kid from Montreal found a Google image of a piece of the jungle that he said, "Hey, there's something buried under there." And sure enough, it's a lost city. So they all seem to be the same time frame, but all across the planet. Like, nobody would communicate at that time. Like, there was no
Yeah.
internet, there was no mail. Most of these cultures didn't even know other cultures existed outside of their own. So the commonality on that is amazing. It would certainly, they have a point, like if there is some type of ancient, and again, the ancient alien theory is multifaceted. It's not only ruins, it's, the panspermia theory. Maybe we're seeded, maybe it's a hybrid project. I mean, there's many facets of this quote unquote ancient alien theory. But if you just want to look at it from an archaeological point of view, the raw goods, the Sphinx and all that stuff, the Sphinx, the damage around the feet is water erosion. It's not from wind or anything else. So the last time there was water there was many thousands of years, longer than they thought the Sphinx could possibly be old. So some of these things that they thought were 4,000 BC are more like 10 or 12,000 BC. And
Yeah.
maybe even that's not accurate because you can't carbon date stone. And, and most organic material withers away after a certain number of years. They really don't know how old this stuff is. And that goes for Incan ruins, Aztec ruins, Pumapunku in Peru. They have these H cut blocks, and it's like a small H inside a bigger H, it's almost like the Russian doll. And they
Right.
made their joint so friggin' complicated. And there's even some stones that are so well preserved that if you run your thumb down one of those lines, you'll cut yourself. It's like they were laser etched. And this is at a time where, they were drinking out of pig bladders and carrying basket. Like, we're nowhere near as advanced as we were supposedly, we would have had to been to build all those
Yeah.
things, right?
Well, see, we always have these concepts of like, well, what it would be like to live back then, but we really have no idea. Like, you would die from everything. Like, if you made it to the age of like 12, there's good chances you're going to see adulthood, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
most people died
Oh
in
yeah, the birth rate was
yeah.
very, very low. That's why everybody had 30 kids, because 15 of them weren't going to make it, you know.
Yeah. So, to
And there's no
spend
cable TV, so what else are you going to do?
yeah, but still at some point fake a headache or something,
There's no Advil back then, so I
That's
bet you there was
just
a lot of headaches.
yeah. But yeah, to spend that much time and not only that, but to have the technology that they use just suddenly disappear. Like there's no tools ever found
Yeah.
around these sites to say, oh, they use this, right? So yeah, it is a mystery.
And a lot of these ancient epics, they read like science fiction. A lot of the East Indian culture with the Vedas and the Mahabharata, they talk about flying ships, like literally machines having wars in the sky, shooting beams and lasers at each other and bombs and all that. And this is like thousands of years ago. Like the thought of flight wasn't even conjured as far as we know, and yet they seem to have what they believe to be a real depiction. And nobody that believes in that faith, it's not supposed to be lore, it's supposed to be true. Yeah, that actually happened, right? They take it literal. So I mean, either they witness something, or there's a part of our own history that we don't know about. Maybe they talk about antediluvian societies, the flood that destroyed everyone. Who knows what was before that? Who knows if it even happened? But it's bizarre when all the major religions seem to have a similar story, and like they don't agree on anything else globally, but yet certain key fundamental blocks of main religion seems to all go together with that, right? That I think we're a lot older than we think we are. And again, there's been many extinctions on this planet. I mean, even if you want to look at a scientific level, look at flight has evolved 4 separate times on the planet Earth. So there would be a society, maybe it was insect form or whatever, or a culture of animals. There's a huge die-off, an extinction event. Things bounce back, they rebound. Flight evolved in another way, maybe become birds this time. So the point is, and again, this is researchable, don't take my word for it, go do your own research. But yeah, flight has evolved on this planet 4 separate times from what we believe to be nothing. So either it was aided, or maybe that's just the course of evolution everywhere. Maybe we could totally expect that if there is life elsewhere, yeah, it could look close to us, and they could have animals and insects and birds and all that stuff on their planet too, because maybe that's just the eventual course of all life. If you blow yourself up or pollute your genome, you go extinct, it sparks up again, and you give this another round. So who knows how many takes there have been at this, and if you look at ancient alien ruins, or the theory of ancient aliens in relation to the ruins, it would certainly make sense that there's some credence there.
and every alien that they mention on there, because there's quite a bit. I'm not all familiar with them, but they're all bipeds,
Yeah,
right? They're all
relatively humanoid. Close
yes,
enough.
very much so, and
Eyes,
hybrids.
2 legs, 2 arms. They're not like octopus walking on the ground,
No,
right?
just like, oh, it was bubbles that came out of, a flying saucer. That's not the case.
Yeah.
So to me, I find that funny. It's always bipeds and humanoid. It's like, we come from far, from wherever they are from, and they're all humanoids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find
I
that
mean, there are
interesting.
there are reports of like reptilians, and if you want to get into cryptids, and like skinwalkers, or like half wolf, bipedal wolf looking things, Bigfoot, even fairies. Like I saw a video from somebody's doorbell camera the other day. I posted it on my Facebook page. It's a legit fairy flying in front of the doorbell camera, sort of pauses and takes off. Like this thing's maybe 4 or 5 inches. That has human arms and legs and wings, and away it goes. Like, what the hell is that? That's not an insect of any sort. And yeah, there's a lot of fake stuff, but that's not the only video claiming to be of such too. So
Oh man, we probably killed so many of them with our lanterns outside.
yeah.
The ones that zap the bugs.
Oh yeah, I never thought of that. When you get the
Yeah,
really big zap, maybe
yeah.
maybe we did some damage to somebody. Yeah.
Yeah,
If
that's
they're
not good.
evolved enough to still be around, they should know to avoid the bug zapper, though. Come on.
Well, yeah, you think at this point they would have learned, but who
Evolve
knows?
or go extinct. Those are the
Yeah,
two options.
yeah. I think we know which way they decide to go.
Yeah. So
Okay, so
we'll
so
move on to another show here. We
yeah, I
got
was gonna say
so
Ancient
yeah, I guess we're
Aliens.
both a yay for Ancient Aliens. Check it
Yes.
out. there's a lot of older episodes that they don't show on your sort of on demand or whatever, but you can YouTube them, and I'm sure there's other ways of finding older episodes as well if you're internet savvy. So, yeah, we definitely think it's a yay. So let's move on to Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation, which was a History Channel program that was produced by, well, co-produced by Luis Elizondo, and it basically started the breaking of the story of the Nimitz and the USS Princeton, the Tic Tac video, the gimbal, the Go Fast. You know, that was the first time on public cable television that somebody made an attempt to decipher this story. And he's had a lot of reputable people on that show. A lot of guests have been on our show, you know, like Sean Cahill and that type of thing. And so, what do you think about Lou Elizondo's show? That's what put him on the map.
Yeah, I loved the show. I was looking forward to it when it was announced. I saw the first season, saw the second season. I liked them both. I think now looking back, I could see the production value that went into those shows. So I could see where the wanting to disclose more information format and the entertainment value, like there's tons of stuff that was recorded that didn't make the cut
For sure.
into the show. And it's, the drama was there. Like, what did you see? Like you could definitely tell there was a production value to it. So, but I love the show. I like the spin on it. I like the fact that we had Senator Harry Reid that was on it as well. And they covered basically all the aspects from the Nimitz incidents to what's happening now in the UFO world, right? Or at least up to the last 2 years, anyways. So yeah, I like both seasons. What did you think of them?
I think there's things that we take for granted now that we know just off the cuff information that are attributed to that show. You know, like I said, I think Luis Elizondo, it was a chance for him to tell his story. You know, maybe a little Bob Lazarian to sort of come clean and put your face on TV. Maybe that's the only way you're secure in this type of thing. If you're going to take those kind of risks, is actually come out, not be, you know, a darkened face or a garbled voice on a recording. But, you know, guys like Sean Cahill and, Mr. Voorhees as well. Like there's many of these guys have been on this show, but the people that were involved in the hands-on viewing, subsequent scientists, the bigger minds and brains, the Chris Mellons of the world and Tom DeLong, and everybody who we now just assume that's always been part of this. We didn't know who they were until this show.
Yeah.
So, I always have a skeptical kind of a filter on things when I watch it for the first time. I'm always trying to think like, what's the end game? Why? Yeah, okay, great. There's a show about aliens on TV. They're not going to, I'm skeptical, right? So I'm automatically thinking I'm not going to gain anything from it. But why, And I think it's a positive thing. The fact that a major television network and many networks now are agreeing to run these series for more than 1 year in a lot of cases. It tells you that they're spending money on it and they're making money. People are watching it. If you don't watch a show, advertisers don't want to advertise on that show. If there's no ratings and there's no viewers, who wants to pay, $85,000 to have your commercial run on a History Channel show in, Western Canada on, 9 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon? So the ratings have to be there. There has to be enough of a thirst for knowledge for these networks to agree to continue to fund this type of stuff, right? So for that reason alone, I think it's good. It's making it digestible enough that the average person who's kind of halfway interested, or maybe doesn't even know, maybe they just don't know anything about this, at least it's not crossing the line and it's not giving you bad information.
Right.
It might be dumbed down, slightly filtered, maybe a little bit altered just because they know it's going out to everybody, but at least it's there. 20 years ago, there was no television shows that were legitimate series on the subject. And they certainly didn't feature government and military people willing to talk on the record. So, hats off to them. I know Luis Elizondo did mention that he kind of split from To the Stars Academy because they wanted to continue to stay media based. He wanted to do other things with this whole platform that he now has. But I think that was the springboard, and he wouldn't have a platform if it wasn't for that show.
Yeah. I mean, it launched Lou quite a bit. But I think, yeah, the creative differences between what the show wanted, and keep in mind, they haven't come out with a third season, right? So
I don't think they're going to. I think it was. I think it's been canceled. Yeah, they haven't been renewed. So
yeah, unless they're going to start
I think that was
revealing
his
some.
choice, though. I have heard him go on the record say that he had the opportunity and just decided not to. So,
Oh, gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's still investigations going on. He has his own way of going about what he's doing, right? And plus, I've seen as of late, Lou's on Twitter hasn't been as active. A lot of people been attacking him, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
You end up being the person that's up front leading the charge. People are going to throw rocks, and you see that happen with him. So I hope he's okay. I hope wherever he's at there that he's recouping from Twitter and focusing on
And
whatever it is that he
I'm
needs to
sure he's not
focus
making
on,
money
right?
from this. This is not benefiting him
No,
anyway. This has been a
no.
pain in the ass to him and his family. And I'm sure his wife or kids or whatever have said, like, just forget it. Go do something else. Like, it's
Yeah,
gone further than you thought it was going to go. Just forget about it. But him, unlike George or like George Knapp and other guys, even, like Eric Von Daniken and those guys, you write a book, Cherry to the Gods in like the 70s, and it gained huge movement, and people, a lot of the ufologists nowadays and guys that have been in this for decades has been because of some of those pioneers. So
yeah,
he's kind of like a modern day pioneer, and if he's the first person you got this message from, then it started something within you, right? If you're listening to this show and you didn't know anything about this before Lou Elizondo, you can thank him for getting you into this. It's a
yeah.
super interesting topic. It'll drive you nuts. It'll prevent you from really finding the answer, but that's what makes it cool. Easy things are easy. So,
Yeah. 2 years of doing this, and I still have no clue what the hell
yeah.
this whole
And the more
phenomenon is
people we
about.
speak to, the further away it seems to be getting too. Like,
Yeah,
just when you think you're making progress, it's like, oh, it's not actual nuts and bolts craft. Yeah, they're interdimensional. They exist at a quantum level. They can, dematerialize, and like, wait a minute. I know a lot about this stuff, and it's really bothering me now that I feel like I don't know anything, So it humbles you for sure.
yeah. Well, there's got to be some sort of validity to those claims, because some of the stuff that these crafts are capable of doing, of just appearing and disappearing in one spot, or
Yep.
appearing at three different places at the same time, like a lot like what electrons do around, right? So it's just weird. Uh, yeah. So I'm going to say that both those shows, season one, season two,
Yeah,
great
for
shows. I would
absolutely.
definitely recommend them
Definitely
for,
watch it.
for yeah,
Yeah, it was well done. It's produced well. They refrained from being too opinionated. It's like they knew that people were going to just rake them over the coals if they even said the slightest thing that could be taken the wrong way. So they definitely made it clear that here's our position. We don't know. We just want to know that if it is a threat, somebody's looking at it and we're getting to the bottom of it. So
right.
good on them for keeping it real. I'm a yay for unidentified inside America's UFO investigation.
Good.
All
Now
right.
you want to talk about Stephen Greer's movies?
I like Stephen Greer. I know we've chatted at length, and sometimes the opinions vary a bit, but I think when he first came out with Unacknowledged, I mean, here's an emergency room physician. This guy, and I was a med student, so I understand the path it would have taken to become a full fledged doctor and cardiologist and all the rest. I decided to be an entrepreneur instead. It matches my personality better, but I had the grades to do it if I wanted to, right? So I have a real appreciation for this guy, because to be an emergency room doctor is not any doctor wants to do this or is even capable. Your average family physician is kind of like a veterinarian. They have
Right.
time, they have study guides, they have people they can ask for advice and opinions. And if it's a subject they're not familiar with, they refer you to a specialist, right? A guy that's an emergency room tech has seconds to decide what to do to save somebody's life. A guy comes in with a chainsaw in his head. You're the guy to figure out, hey, what do we do, doc? So for a guy to take that type of career, he's already making crazy money and doing all that. And he did have a near-death experience as a younger person. He knows what it's like to die. This is according to him. And when you know death, you don't fear death, and that kind of changed his outlook on a lot of things. Got into esoteric sciences and meditation and all that, and made a full-fledged transition from being an emergency room doctor to being one of the main proponents and the main reason that 2001 press club conference happened in Washington. And you had all these guys that worked for the FAA and for the government, and even Paul Hellyer, the Minister of Canadian Defense, and all these big names all testified in front of Congress, or it was kind of like a sub testimonial. It wasn't officially in Congress, but it was the National Press Club, and they all got to say their piece. It went on for days and days, and that's what really got him started. So when he came out with this movie, it basically it's the story of what's led up to now, right?
Right.
And it's the fill in to the data from Area 51 and Project Blue Book. Well, what's happened since then? If you don't know, watch Unacknowledged. And even Steven Tyler was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he just kept saying it. You got to watch Unacknowledged.
Yeah.
What is it? You got to watch Unacknowledged. So
Yeah.
that's my advice too. I'm a big yay. I think it's on Amazon Prime, maybe some other platforms right now, but
Yeah, no, I'll give it an A as well because I really like those movies. I've had my opinions, obviously, at times about certain things about Dr. Greer's career, but I do agree with what you're saying. If it's not for him, having that press conference, that put a lot of pressure. It should have gotten way much more publicity than it did
for
get.
sure.
Yeah, you're right. But no, anything he comes out with, I do watch. And
And now I can sense the hesitation in your voice because I'm your buddy and I
but
know it. So, but let's
but
talk about movie number 2. This is
okay.
where it all comes together. So, second movie is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And these aren't like fictional movies. This is like a documentary based movie. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I guess it's kind of like a play on that Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But there are legitimate, Close Encounter of the First Kind is you see a craft or you see a light. Close Encounter the second time, you actually, see the inhabitants kind of thing. Third kind, you interact with life, and then you make it all the way up to the fifth kind, which is collective meditation causing visitation. Like you summon them and they come to you if you're right of heart and right of mind. So now it's gone way out there in quantum land. So I know you're a little bit skeptical because he is charging for these courses now, right? Like I think you pay $5,000 to go sit in a desert in New Mexico and
Yeah, bring your own lunch.
maybe see some lights flashing in the desert. But
Yeah.
but if you watch the actual documentary, a lot of the information that he talks about was like, you know, legitimate government people that wanted to have disclosure many years ago in the 80s and early 90s. And they were stifled by either government sort of covert projects or legitimate spooky shit that scared the hell out of people that said, I don't want to go into this any further. So
Right.
I think the second movie is a lot more on like an esoteric level. It's kind of like going down the rabbit hole in terms of what does this all mean. He's now a big proponent of consciousness and we're all one. And when we realize that, we become just like the aliens. So it's a little bit deep. It's easily digestible, though. It's not over most people's pay grade. You might have to watch it once or twice. But my advice, if you watch something he says, it doesn't quite jive, rewind it, watch it again. Watch it 2 or 3 times. It'll make sense. And I think he's a lot more brilliant than we think. I think he's gone a little bit crazy, but maybe he's like punch drunk love kind of thing. Like he's had legitimate. Imagine if what he's saying is true. He's gone in the desert. He's collectively meditated where people feel love and oneness, and they've reached out. They've had a common idea, and they're summoning these things like, "Come see us. You're welcome here. We want to interact with you." Imagine that shit actually works. You'd go kind of cuckoo too, and that's all you would be focused on for the rest of your life if it
Right.
actually works. So I think his current behavior matches somebody who's had success from something that is legit and not quite as crazy as we think. And he's just a big brain, and those people are a little bit strange anyway. But I think Stephen Greer's the real deal. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm gonna
If it
get some hate
wasn't
mail on that, but I think
if
he's a real deal.
if it wasn't because of the amount of money that he charges people and that he's charged people before for, a lot of different things throughout his career. But if it was true that he can actually, as a group, if we all meditate and focus, so we can make them appear, he's capitalizing on it, right? He's making money off of it. It's like a tour guide now. Like, come out to the desert and
I
we'll
mean, the
all
guy was probably
meditate. No,
making 400K a year as an ER physician. So, should somebody be able to feed their family and do something they love? Yeah. If it's based on negative terms,
yeah,
I don't think so. But I don't begrudge anybody making a living for sure. If if it makes you a better person. If you go to the friggin' South America and have an ayahuasca trip and the guy that organizes that's making 10 grand a month, I don't give a shit. If that changes my life, it was worth it for me. So I don't begrudge him making a living. I don't think people should get rich off of this
Uh,
stuff, but
if I was guaranteed to see UFOs and have one of those trips, then it would be worth the money,
is that
right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd be like, yeah, let's get.
So you need to do ayahuasca and see aliens? Isn't that enough to
Well,
kill most people?
let's bring it on.
Let's see how
I'm gonna be
scared I could make myself.
if I'm paying that kind of money, I want my money's worth. That's all
If
I'm
you
saying.
want, you could eat a bunch of mushrooms and I'll dress up like a gray and just scare the shit out of you. I'll do it for half price.
It's not the same.
All
All right,
right, so we're,
so
we're both a yes for Stephen Greer, sometime begrudgingly, but we're both a yay.
yes, I want to say the encounters of the fifth kind. Like I said, I'm not a huge believer in what's that CE5
Yeah,
is the term for it. I'm not a huge believer in that.
I'm a
I
huge believer in that. I think it's real.
well there you go. Then try to convert me.
It
I've been
has to be, bro. At the Planck scale, we are all one. Like I'm into that. Maybe I'm just a hippie at heart or something, but
yeah
I think you could get there. I'm pretty sure everything magical happens if you can really get your brain. I think there's something to it.
yeah
Maybe it's a little bit over dramatized. I've heard reports that he's timed flares. Like there's been planes that drop flares, and then hey, everybody, look, it's those red globe. Like I don't know. I've heard that he's full of shit, but I really want to believe that he's not. And
yeah.
mainly not because of him. I could care less about him. I just wish it was true that we could actually interface with these things if we get disciplined enough, if we get pure enough at heart, we can make that happen. I'd like to believe that that's possible. So I don't want to believe it's all fake. So that's why I'm giving him a thumbs up.
See,
Optimistic.
everybody that gets like a really close encounter with any entities, it's always because they're at the wrong place, wrong time. You know, like I was driving by myself down this dark road. Of course you were.
Yeah.
Like every time you're isolated, they're like, "Hey, that's easy pickings. Let's go after that." And that's usually those are the lucky people. You know, the people
But
that
maybe
actually
the intention behind those type of encounters is not the same as we're summoning them to come and enlighten us or even just show that they're there. I've heard stories of people that said they were meditating and they saw a craft and it zipped off and they were like, oh no, come back, and the thing came back and then stayed for a second and then zipped off again. So they understood their petition. They could,
yeah.
so I'd like to believe it's real. I haven't had one of those experiences, I'll be honest, but
All right.
I'd
So
like to try it for sure. I'd like to get to that master of your domain level where you could actually communicate with some ancient ideas. Maybe it's just transient energy that's like a radio station that we can all uplink to and download info. Maybe that's just the sum of all the knowledge of the cosmos is available at some level if you're there,
yeah.
if you're the master kind of thing, right? So I just
Well,
think it's super cool. So I don't want to shit on it.
fair enough.
That's the
No,
honest answer.
no. Like I said, I'll watch anything that he comes out with. Like I watch his documentaries, but for that one, I wasn't too keen on it as much as maybe you were. But yeah, I'm gonna give a B to
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
Dr.
fair.
Greer movies. Yeah.
So I know we've been these are all pro. Who do you know that you think is just totally full of it? Like, let's give our viewers a hey,
Stan
don't even
Romanek. Stan
Stan
Romanek.
Stan Romanek. Okay,
Yeah,
who
I
I
believe that's his
know
name.
I
Yeah.
I've heard of him. I think I've watched. He had a whole bunch of encounters, I think, right? Supposedly.
Well, allegedly, he was being followed by UFOs, and people saw that, yes, there's something strange with him, that, these things seem to be attracted to him. And then he started claiming he was abducted by aliens. And then they're playing peekaboo with him in the windows at night or in the hallways. It's just, but you could tell it's to me, it's like a cheap balloon or like a papier mache sort of head that he came up with that's just playing peekaboo with him in the hallway or through the window. Like it's always just peeking up and then going back down. So I call it peekaboo. Anyways, I thought that was starting to get really stupid. I'm like, why would they travel light years just to get here to take you? But instead of taking you, they're going to play peekaboo with you, knowing full well you're recording them. It makes no sense.
Yeah, fair
Right.
enough.
And
Yeah.
yeah, after a while, people were paying him. He had almost like a following as well. Like he almost became like a guru of ufology. Like he had this weird thing about him. And then this one time on I think it was a Zoom call, he's about high strangeness, just weird things happening all the time. And he was saying that things were always flying around him. And you could totally tell that his finger came up and released like this, like the pencil. You could tell it was his hand that flicked the pencil at his own face. You could tell it was him. He's like, "Oh,
Oh
it's
my
high
God.
strangeness." It's like, dude, you flicked the own
Oh
pencil.
my God.
Like, just yeah. And then the
And those
bugger,
people give the ufology a bad name, right?
yeah,
They're what the skeptics go on and say, look, you believe you believe the same shit as this idiot.
yeah.
And maybe those people are planted. Who knows? Maybe it really is misinformation. And
Well, it's 15 minutes of fame, for these
yeah,
people, or they think, oh, they're actually believing this. Like I've actually fooled them. I could get into this.
there was a
Uh,
guy in Belgium. His name was Billy Meyer. This guy had one arm, and apparently, I think the people he communicated with were the Playarin or something like that. You really got to read about this guy because it's deep. We don't have enough time on this show to talk about it. Long story short, he believes he's been in communication with these people for years. He's been able to ask them things at various points in his life where he needed direction and all the rest. But at the end of it, to sum it all up, they know all about us. They're much older than we are. They don't live and die like we do. They just become to the point of like light beings where they have a physical form, but that's only for our recognition. And they're benevolent and they care about us and they acknowledge the existence of a supreme creator. Like even some of these aliens believe in God, like it's very reinforcing if you're already of that opinion, and it's very interesting if you're already not. So
right.
yeah, I would say if we're just tossing names out of random people that have crazy stories, look up Billy Meyer, Meier. And most of his stuff is in German or French or whatever, because Belgium is like tri-language. But
Yeah.
if you look up Billy Meyer, there's been some English speaking people that have done documentaries on him. He's got pictures of these things. He'd go outside and sing a hymn, and they would show up, and he's got photographed like actual film, which is a lot harder to fake than digital stuff nowadays, right? Like look
Yeah.
at
And
special effects in movies. You
the
you
guy
can't even
had
tell
one
the
arm.
difference.
Like, just think about it. The guy had one arm.
Yeah,
How is he gonna fake it? Like he's gotta hold the camera while trying to like throw a frisbee sized UFO and capture it just in time with
that's
his
right.
one arm.
He looks like
Like,
a one-armed ZZ Top with a similar life to Calvin Parker. Like never wanted any fame from this, but hey,
yeah.
they've been talking to me for years, so what the hell? I might as well bring it out in the open. So
Yes.
similar in that respect.
And who knows? Maybe he was right. I don't. Some people swear by it to get his books. That it's really good. I've never got my hands on any copies. I keep looking every time I'm at the bookstore, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't.
So back to your Stan Romanek. Why is it a nay in your mind? And I don't know him A or B. I've heard the name, but I don't know if he's full of it or not. I don't have an opinion. So
Just because of who he is, and then he got caught with kitty porn too.
yeah, well
So
that
yeah,
sucks
that sucks, and that pretty much ruins everything as far as I'm
for
concerned that
sure.
he's ever said. Right?
Yeah.
So no, I
Okay,
don't.
so F you Stan Romanek.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty
Cool.
much.
All right, let's move along. All right. What about other like subsequent shows that are kind of like paranormal based, not all necessarily full UAP all the time, like The Unexplained with William Shatner, which is a History Channel production. Have you seen any of those shows?
I haven't seen many. I've seen maybe 2 episodes. I like them,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say that I'm a connoisseur of that show at all.
That
No.
was very French of you, my friend.
Well,
Sounds
it's
sounds
what
pretty good.
happens when you have a beer. You come out with the French accent. So,
Yeah, that's all right. We're this is an evening recording, so what the hell? We're
oh
giving it.
yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I've watched quite a few of those shows. Again, they do touch on different topics. Some of it is like, statues in France that are crying, like weird stuff like that. Some of it
Yeah,
is UAP related. Some of it is cryptid. They've had some pretty bizarre stuff on there, people with weird growths and shit like that. So I think it's just Bill Shatner being Bill Shatner. Do I like Bill Shatner? I think he's awesome. He's Canadian. We're proudly Canadian. He's got the Order of Canada. He just went to space. He was on
That's
Star
pretty
Trek.
cool. Yeah,
There's not
that's
much
pretty
more
cool.
this guy can do. Like, would you stop making us look bad? Those are big shoes to fill, Bill Shatner.
Yeah.
But I do have a great respect for the man. And again, you could tell it's similar production to like Ancient Aliens or another program like The Proof is out there. They all seem to have similar guests, similar themes. Sometimes, I mean, even um, the speaking and the what do they call that when the guy who's talking over the show,
Oh, the
the
narrator.
narrator, like we're doing. Yeah, the narrative always seems to be pretty similar. There's even one called America's Book of Secrets. They touch on a lot of similar things. But I think overall, the History Channel does a pretty good job with all the programming they have. Whoever's on it, they're putting out some good material. So take it for what it's worth. But yeah, I would give anything from the History Channel and involving UAP studies or ancient aliens or anything like that unexplained. I'd say it's worth paying the extra couple bucks to get the channel every month.
For me, I would say the unsolved mysteries, all the old ones and the new
Yeah, yeah.
ones that on Netflix as well. They're not all about UAPs or like alien abductions,
Mhm.
but they're good. They're
Yeah.
good episodes, and the ones that do involve some sort of abduction scenarios, they're always good reenactments that are done. At least the story's always good.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I miss the voice though. I'm gonna admit, like in the newer episodes, they don't have that.
Yeah.
Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries. It's
Yeah,
like,
well then it became the 90s and then the 2000s and then that became not so cool. So,
yeah, the show sort of went down after that, but I still enjoy it. I
yeah.
still think there's some good ones in there.
Yep, for sure. I get a kick out of watching things that are produced in different countries. And, we have a lot of guests from the UK and Australia and all the rest. And there's one that I watched on Amazon Prime. It was called Australian Skies. Now, Australian being ALIEN at the end of it, Australian Skies. And it was, starts off random lights and, phenomenon and stuff like that. But to hear these people get so jacked up and excited about the same phenomenon that we're jacked up and excited about
Yeah,
on the total other end of the planet, it just seemed to have a nice symmetry to us. It's like, hey, it's not just us. This isn't something you get on cable TV. It's a subscription based program, but it's nice to see, well made productions in other countries. And, our friend Philip Mantle, who we had on the show a couple months ago, and he was part of a documentary that recently came out. And we're going to be interviewing more people from that production as well in the future. But it's nice to see that there's money being spent on this. This is high budget stuff. It's not tacky. And the stuff that they're bringing out is actually new information. We watch it and we learn something new. So
well, the
I'm always up for
ratings,
that.
yeah, the ratings show at least the showrunners that we are interested in this sort of material.
Yeah.
So yeah, it encourages them to spend more money on like, okay, well, let's come out with season two, or can look at Ancient Aliens for crying out loud. Obviously, the ratings for that show must have been really high because they're
Many
continuing.
seasons.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and they continue making them. So obviously, the ratings are there. So
And
the
if you look at
interest is
like
there.
Netflix and Amazon Prime, and Netflix has been in the news lately because I think they said in the first quarter, 200,000 people canceled their subscription. Password sharing is becoming a real problem. They cancel a series everybody loves. Now they boycott and they don't want to watch it anymore. So they're facing their challenges. So now more than ever, you have a voice by what you watch. If you are a viewer of a show, it's being recorded somewhere that you dig that. And if there's a lack of you digging those shows, they don't get rerun and they don't get picked up again for
Right.
subsequent series and they just get tanked, right? So I think if you're into this stuff, consume the media, absorb as much of it as you can. Hell, if you like gardening, read everything you can possibly read on it, watch every video you could possibly watch on it. Then you know that you're really into that subject. So if this
Yeah.
happens to be your cup of tea, go hard, read it all, make your own decisions. Don't be a sheep, right? Make your own opinion on things, but don't become ignorant either because we've all been opinionated at times and we've been put in our place pretty quick and quickly brought back down to earth. Like we don't know as much as we think we do. Having an open mindedness to this, I think, is key for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And that was also a big part of, a lot of different points of views on the podcast is important. And I don't want to have any, like, even I have my differences with the CE5 stuff, but I want people from the CE5 community to come on the podcast
Sure.
and talk about it because that changes my point of view, right? Or at least allows me to say, well, why do you believe that? Or how does it work, right?
If
That's,
we only had people on that agreed with us, this would be a one-sided show.
oh,
So I had this
absolutely.
discussion with my wife the other day. I said, look, it's not about the show. Yeah, we do a podcast, we talk about aliens. It's not about aliens, it's about the show. It's the people, it's the banter. You don't have a talk show unless you have talk.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is just the flavor of the day, but you don't have anything unless you have that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, I'd like to consider myself like the Whoopi Goldberg of this podcast. Okay, so I totally get what you mean. Yeah, no, as far as those shows go, you can find them on Amazon. Netflix has them. Actually, even Disney, I think, has a few documentaries as
Discovery
well.
has quite a few too. I wanted to mention Expedition X. There's a few variations of it. It's with Josh Gates. It's on Discovery Channel. Basically, it was him just doing random research. It's kind of turned more into paranormal and UAP based now. He has a guy and a girl. I think Jessica and Phil. They're his new hosts, and they do things like Skinwalker Ranch, Beast of Bray Road, Bigfoot, and he'll send them out. So it kind of has a tacky setup to begin with, but
Right.
they has some really high profile guests on there. They've interviewed Lou Elizondo and Sean Cahill. They feature the Tic Tac video on their show. So they're as current and up to date as everybody else. And it's not a very well known program, but I do give it my seal of approval. Expedition X, it's on Discovery Channel. And the host is a guy named Josh Gates. He has a couple other spin off expeditions. But it's been good. I've actually enjoyed most of his programs, which is rare. I'm usually 50-50 at best, but I will give that one a thumbs up before we sign off on this episode. So
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I haven't watched it yet.
and there's like so many others too, like we mentioned, The Proof Is Out There. You mentioned before The Phenomenon.
Great
What else?
movie. Yeah.
Great movie. Yeah. So yeah, just if you don't necessarily use the keywords you would normally use to search for things. Internet is very algorithmic nowadays. UFO has been replaced with UAP. If you search UFO on Netflix, you get one set of results. You search UAP, you get different results. Same as Amazon, same as YouTube, same as podcast land. So change up your keywords. The internet is based on popular searches. So if you don't find as much as you want using certain verbiage, change it up and you'd be surprised what pops up. So happy hunting.
Hey, we also want to say hello to Sage, by the way, who always listens to the podcast.
He's one of our biggest fans. He's a great guy. And he wasn't super into the topic until we started kind of piquing his interest. And now he's showing us stuff. This guy is as deep as we are, loves it, can't get enough of it. So here's a big shout out to our buddy Sage.
Are you paying attention?